The Alpha entered the quarters, found his cubs. Lying beside the human commander, Wrath walked through the cold metal corridors of his ship. His claws clicked against the floor with each heavy step. He was tired. The meeting with the council had lasted for hours, and his patience was wearing thin. The other alien species did not understand strength. They talked too much and acted too little. He reached his private quarters and pressed his palm against the entry panel. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Roth expected to see the care drone hovering near his cubs. The machine was programmed to watch them, feed them, and keep them safe while he worked, but the drone was not there. Instead, Wrath saw something that made his blood run cold. His two cubs, Nira and Kovan, were sleeping against a human. The small creature sat on the floor with his back against the wall. One cub was tucked under each of his arms. Their small bodies rose and fell with peaceful breathing. The human had a thin device in his hand, and he was reading something in a quiet voice. Wrath felt rage flood through his body. His scales bristled and his claws extended. A low growl built in his throat. Humans were weak creatures. They had no claws, no scales, no real strength. They were barely worth noticing in the great galaxy. And now one of them dared to touch his children. The human looked up. His eyes were brown and calm. He did not look afraid, even though Wrath stood nearly 3 times his height. The human slowly closed the device and set it aside. He placed one hand gently on each cub, careful not to wake them. "Commander Wrath," the human said quietly. His voice was soft, respectful. "I apologize for the intrusion. Explain yourself." Roth's voice came out as a deep rumble. His sharp teeth showed as he spoke. "Explain why you are in my quarters. Explain why you dared to touch my cubs." The human stayed calm. He did not move quickly or make sudden gestures. "My name is Kale. I work with the diplomatic team from Earth. Earlier today there was an alarm in the ship. Something about a pressure leak in Section 7. Your cubs were in the common lounge when it happened." Roth remembered the alarm. It had been a false alert, fixed within minutes, but the sound had been loud and frightening. "The care drone malfunctioned during the alarm," Kale continued. "It shut down completely. Your cubs were alone and scared. I found them hiding under a table. They were shaking." Roth's anger wavered slightly. He knew his cubs had been struggling since their mother died in battle 3 months ago. They barely spoke anymore. They did not play like cubs should play. At night, they woke screaming from bad dreams. "I tried to find someone from your crew to help them," Kale said. "But everyone was responding to the alarm. The cubs would not let me leave. When I tried to step away, they cried harder. So I stayed." Roth circled the human slowly like a predator studying prey. Kale did not take his hands off the cubs. He kept them there, protective and gentle. Nira and Kovan slept peacefully. Roth had not seen them sleep so well in weeks. "What did you do to them?" Roth demanded. "What trick did you use?" "No trick, Commander." Kale looked down at the sleeping cubs. His expression was soft. "I just sat with them. I told them they were safe. I shared my food rations because they were hungry. Then I read them stories from my homeworld. Stories about brave explorers who traveled to distant stars." Roth studied the human more closely. Kale wore simple clothes, not a uniform. He was young for a human, perhaps 28 or 29 cycles. His hands were small and soft, without weapons or claws. Everything about him screamed weakness, and yet his cubs trusted him. "Nira," Roth said, using his command voice. "Kovan, wake up." The cubs stirred. Their eyes opened slowly. When they saw their father, they sat up straight. But they did not move away from Kale. Instead, Nira placed one small hand on the human's arm. "Father," she said quietly, "please do not be angry with Uncle Kale. He helped us." Uncle Kale. The words struck Wrath like a physical blow. His cubs had given this stranger a family title. They had accepted him into their circle, something they had not done with anyone since their mother's death. Kovan nodded in agreement. The young cub looked at Kale with clear affection. "He makes the scary feelings go away." Roth felt something crack inside his chest. His cubs were not weak. They were grieving, and somehow this fragile human had reached them in a way he could not. "Stand up, human," Wrath said. Kale carefully helped both cubs to their feet before standing himself. He was barely taller than Wrath's shoulder. The commander could kill him with one swipe of his claws. They both knew it, but when Wrath stepped forward, Nira and Kovan moved between them. His own cubs placed their small bodies in front of the human, protecting him from their father. "Please do not hurt him," Nira said. Her voice shook, but she did not move. "Uncle Kale is good. He is kind." Wrath stared at his daughter. She had not shown this much courage in months. Kovan stood beside her, equally determined. The human had given them something back. Something Wrath thought was lost forever, their spirit. Wrath pulled back his claws slowly. He stood at his full height and looked down at all three of them. His mind worked through the impossible situation. Everything he knew about humans said they were weak and worthless. Everything he believed about strength said this creature should not be able to affect his cubs this way, but the truth stood before him. His cubs were defending a human. They were showing bravery and determination because of what this human had done for them. "You will report to my quarters tomorrow morning," Wrath said to Kale. "We will discuss this further." Kale nodded once. "Yes, Commander, now leave." The human bent down to the cubs. He hugged them both gently. "Sleep well, little ones. I will see you again soon? Promise?" Kovan asked. "I promise." Kale walked past Wrath carefully. The commander watched him go, his mind full of questions. When the door closed, Wrath looked down at his cubs. They watched the door where the human had left. "Come," Wrath said quietly. "It is time for sleep." For the first time in months, his cubs obeyed without argument. They climbed into their sleeping pods. As Wrath dimmed the lights, he heard Nira whisper to her brother, "Uncle Kale will come back." He promised. Wrath stood in the darkness, listening to his cubs breathe. Something had changed tonight. Something he did not fully understand. A human had entered his life and challenged everything he believed about strength and weakness, and tomorrow he would need to decide what to do about it. The Alpha entered the quarters, found his cubs lying beside the human. Wrath did not sleep that night. He sat in his command chair, staring at the view screen that showed distant stars. His mind kept returning to the scene in his quarters. His cubs, sleeping peacefully against the human. The way they had defended the creature. The trust in their eyes. It made no sense. When dawn cycle began, Wrath made a decision. He accessed the ship's security systems and pulled up the video recordings from the common lounge. He needed to see what really happened. He needed to understand what this human had done to his cubs. The first recording showed the moment the alarm sounded. The speakers blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed on every wall. Wrath watched as various crew members rushed through the corridors, responding to the emergency. Then he saw his cubs. Nira and Kovan were in the common lounge, as they often were during the day. The care drone hovered beside them. When the alarm started, both cubs jumped. Their ears flattened against their heads in fear. They looked around frantically for help. The care drone flickered once, twice, then went completely dark. It dropped to the floor with a metallic clang. Nira grabbed her brother's hand. They ran to hide under a large table in the corner. Wrath could see them shaking. Kovan was crying. Nira tried to be brave, but her whole body trembled. Several crew members passed through the lounge. None of them stopped. They were all focused on the emergency. His cubs were alone and terrified, and no one helped them. Then the human appeared. Kale walked into the lounge carrying a datapad. He stopped when he saw the care drone on the floor. He looked around the room, searching. His eyes found the cubs under the table. Wrath watched as the human immediately set down his pad and crossed the room. He did not rush. He moved slowly and carefully. When he reached the table, he got down on his hands and knees so he was at the cub's eye level. The recording had no sound, but Wrath could see Kale talking gently. The human held out his hands, palms up, showing he had no weapons. Nira and Kovan watched him with wide, frightened eyes. Kale did not try to touch them. He simply sat down cross-legged in front of the table and kept talking. After several minutes, Kovan slowly crawled forward. The cub sniffed the air, testing this strange creature's scent. The human smiled. Not a threat display, but something warm. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wrapped package. He opened it carefully and broke off a piece of whatever was inside. He offered it to Kovan. The cub hesitated, then took the food. He ate it slowly. After a moment, he crawled closer to the human. Nira followed her brother. Wrath fast-forwarded through the recording. He watched as the human sat with his cubs for nearly an hour. Kale gave them more food from his rations. He made shapes with his hands, creating shadows on the wall that looked like animals and birds. The cubs watched with growing fascination. Eventually, the alarm ended. The red light stopped flashing. But the cubs did not leave the human's side. When Kale tried to stand up, they both grabbed his arms. So he sat back down and pulled out a small device. He started reading to them. By the time the recording showed them all leaving the lounge together, Nira was holding Kale's hand. Kovan walked so close to the human that he kept bumping against his leg. Wrath turned off the recording. He sat in silence, processing what he had seen. There was no manipulation, no tricks. The human had simply been kind. He had sat with frightened children and made them feel safe. Nothing more. Nothing less. Wrath called for his second-in-command. Officer Vex entered the bridge within minutes. The older warrior bowed his head in respect. "Commander? Tell me what you know about humans," Wrath said. Vex's brow ridges drew together in confusion. "Humans, Commander? They are a minor species. Weak physically. No natural weapons or armor. They only recently joined the galactic community." "That is what I know as well," Wrath said. "But I need to know more. Their behaviors, their customs, specifically regarding their young. I can research this for you, Commander." "Do so. Bring me the information within the hour." Vex saluted and left. Wrath remained in his chair, thinking. An hour later, Vex returned with a datapad full of information. "This is interesting, Commander," Vex said as he handed over the pad. "Humans are unusual in many ways. They are one of the few species that regularly care for young that are not their own offspring." "Explain." "They have concepts called adoption and fostering. Humans will take in orphan children and raise them as their own. They do this even across genetic lines. Some humans spend their entire lives caring for children they did not birth." Roth scrolled through the information. He found descriptions of human orphanages, foster systems, and adoption agencies. He read about humans who traveled to other planets specifically to help care for refugee children from different species. "They also form what they call found families," Vex continued. "Bonds based on choice rather than blood. They have titles like uncle, aunt, godparent for people who are not biologically related but are considered family. Uncle Kale, the title his cubs had given the human, now made sense." "Is this behavior considered normal among humans?" Roth asked. "Yes, Commander. It is deeply embedded in their culture. They have a saying, 'It takes a village to raise a child.' They believe all adults share responsibility for protecting and nurturing the young, even strangers' children." Roth set down the datapad. This was so different from Vraxian culture. His people believed cubs should be raised only by their blood parents or, if orphaned, sent immediately to military academies. Outsiders caring for cubs was seen as weakness, a failure of the family line. "There is one more thing, Commander," Vex said carefully. "Several reports mention that humans form emotional attachments very easily. They bond with other species, sometimes even with animals and machines. This bonding can be very strong. It is considered one of their defining traits. And this is not seen as weakness among them?" "No, Commander. They see it as strength. They believe connections make them stronger, not weaker." Roth dismissed Vex and sat alone with his thoughts. A message came through on his personal comm. Kale had arrived at his quarters as ordered. Wrath made his way through the ship. When he entered his quarters, he found the human waiting just inside the door. Kale stood respectfully, his hands at his sides. But Roth noticed his cubs were already there too. They sat on the floor near Kale's feet, looking up at him with hopeful expressions. "I did not summon you too," Wrath said to his cubs. "We wanted to see Uncle Kale," Nira said simply. Wrath looked at the human. "You have affected my cubs in ways I do not understand. Against my better judgment, I am going to test you." Kale met his gaze steadily. "Test me how, Commander?" "You will serve as caretaker for Nira and Kovan for the remaining 3 weeks of this diplomatic mission. You will be under constant surveillance. If you show any weakness, any negligence, any sign that you cannot protect them properly, this arrangement ends. I understand. If they are harmed while in your care, there will be consequences. I would expect nothing less." "Commander." Roth studied the human's face. There was no fear there, but also no arrogance. Just quiet determination and something else. Something that looked like genuine care for his cubs. "Very well," Wrath said. "You will report their status to me twice daily. You will follow all safety protocols. And you will remember that they are Vraxian cubs, not human children. They must learn strength." "Strength comes in many forms, Commander," Kale said quietly. Before Wrath could respond, the ship's alarm blared again. But this time it was not a drill. The tactical officer's voice came over the ship-wide system. "All hands to battle stations. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack." Wrath's training took over instantly. He turned to Kale. "Get my cubs to the emergency shelters now." "Yes, Commander." As Wrath ran toward the bridge, he looked back once. The human had already gathered both cubs close. They looked frightened, but they trusted him. Wrath could see it in their faces. He could only hope that trust was not misplaced. The Alpha entered the quarters, found his cubs lying beside the human. The ship shook violently. Kale grabbed both cubs and pulled them close as another explosion rocked the corridor. Red emergency lights flashed everywhere. The sound of weapons fire echoed through the metal walls. "Stay with me," Kale said, keeping his voice calm even though his heart pounded. "We need to get to the shelter." Nira nodded, but Kovan was crying. The little cub pressed his face against Kale's chest. His small body shook with fear. Kale started moving toward the nearest emergency shelter. He had studied the ship's layout as soon as he came aboard. It was something humans always did, learning escape routes and safe zones. Other species thought it was paranoid. Humans called it prepared. They made it halfway down the corridor when another impact hit the ship. The floor tilted sharply. Kale stumbled and fell to one knee. A large metal panel broke free from the ceiling and crashed down, blocking the corridor ahead. "The main route is blocked," Kale muttered. He looked around quickly, thinking. His eyes found a service hatch in the wall. "This way." "That goes into the maintenance tunnels," Nira said. "Father says they are dangerous." "Right now, the corridors are more dangerous," Kale replied. He pulled open the hatch. The space inside was narrow and dark, perfect for a human. Too small for adult Vraxians, but the cubs could fit. "Listen to me," Kale said, crouching down to face both cubs. "I know you are scared. I'm scared too. But we can do this. We are going to pretend we are space explorers, just like in the stories. We are finding a secret path that no one else knows about." "Like an adventure?" Kovan asked, his tears slowing. "Exactly like an adventure. And explorers are brave, right?" Both cubs nodded. Kale climbed into the maintenance tunnel first. It was cramped and uncomfortable. The metal was cold and sharp in places, but it was safer than the corridors where debris was falling and fires were starting. "Come on," he said, reaching back for the cubs. "Hold on to me." Nira climbed in next, followed by her brother. They crawled through the narrow space, Kale leading the way. He had to stop several times to check his direction using a small emergency light. Behind them, they could hear more explosions. Shouts from crew members. The hiss of emergency doors sealing off damaged sections. "Kovan, squeeze between me and the wall," Kale said suddenly. "You are smaller. I need you to go ahead and tell me if you see any light." The cub did as asked. Kovan crawled forward, then stopped. "I see light. A vent opening." "Perfect. Can you fit through?" Kovan tried, but his shoulders got stuck. He yelped in pain and fear. "It is okay, back up," Kale said gently. He felt along the vent opening. The metal frame was bent. That was why Kovan could not fit. Kale worked his fingers under the frame and pulled. The sharp metal cut into his hands, but he kept pulling until the opening was wider. "Try now." This time Kovan slipped through. Nira followed. Kale barely managed to squeeze himself out. His shirt tore and the metal scraped his skin, but he made it. They were in a service corridor now. Kale checked his position. The emergency shelter was close, maybe 2 more corridors away. "Let us go," he said, taking their hands. They ran together. The ship shook again. Kovan stumbled and cried out. When Kale looked down, he saw the cub was limping. His leg was hurt, probably from the fall earlier. "Can you walk?" Kale asked. Kovan tried, but tears streamed down his face. "It hurts." Kale did not hesitate. He picked up the cub and held him against his chest. "Nira, hold on to my belt and stay close." They moved slower now. Kale's arms burned from carrying Kovan, but he did not put him down. They passed several junctions. Some corridors were blocked. Others had fires burning. Kale chose their path carefully, always moving toward safety. They were almost to the shelter when they heard a massive groaning sound. The ceiling above them started to crack. Huge pieces of metal began to fall. Kale saw the shelter door ahead. It was sealed shut, red lights blinking on the panel. Emergency lockdown. They could not get in, and the ceiling was collapsing. Kale looked around frantically. There was an alcove in the wall, a small space where equipment was stored. He shoved Nira into it, then crouched over both cubs with his own body. He spread himself as wide as he could, making himself a shield. "Close your eyes," he whispered. "It will be okay. Your father will come. He will find us." "Be brave," debris rained down. Heavy metal panels crashed around them. One piece hit Kale's back hard enough to make him gasp. Another struck his shoulder. He felt something warm running down his skin, blood, but he did not move. He kept himself curled over the cubs, protecting them with his fragile human body. The noise was incredible. Crashing, tearing metal. The screech of stress supports. The roar of atmosphere escaping through breaches in the hull. Then, slowly it stopped. Silence fell. Broken only by the distant sound of alarms, Kale tried to move, but pain shot through his entire body. His vision blurred. He could feel the cubs beneath him, small and warm and alive. "Are you hurt?" he managed to whisper. "No," Nira said. Her voice was shaky but strong. "Uncle Kale, you are bleeding." "I am fine," he lied. "Just stay still. Help will come." Time passed strangely. Kale drifted in and out of consciousness. He could hear the cubs talking to him, their small hands touching his face, trying to keep him awake. Then he heard something else. A massive roar that shook the walls. The sound of metal being torn apart by incredible strength. "Father!" Nira screamed. Through the debris came wrath. The commander tore through the wreckage with his bare claws. His eyes were wild, desperate. When he saw them, he moved faster. "Nira! Kovan! We are here!" "But Uncle Kale is hurt." Roth pulled away the last of the debris. He saw his cubs first, checking them quickly for injuries. They were dirty and scared, but unharmed. Then he saw Kale. The human was barely conscious. Blood soaked his clothes. His back and shoulders were covered in cuts and bruises. But he was still curled protectively over the cubs, even though they were safe now. Wrath carefully lifted Kale away. The human's eyes opened slightly. "Cubs," Kale mumbled. "Safe? They are safe," Wrath said. His voice was rough. "Because of you." "Good," Kale whispered. Then his eyes closed. Wrath picked up the human carefully, cradling him like he would his own cubs. His children pressed close, both crying now. "Is Uncle Kale going to die?" Kovan asked. Wrath looked down at the fragile creature in his arms. This weak, soft human who had thrown himself over falling debris to protect cubs that were not even his own species. "No," Wrath said firmly. "I will not allow it." He carried Kale to the medical bay, his cubs following close behind. The medical staff worked quickly. They healed Kale's wounds with advanced technology. Within an hour, the human was stable and resting. Wrath sat beside the medical bed. His cubs refused to leave. They climbed up and sat on either side of Kale, holding his hands. The commander thought about what he had seen. What this human had done. In Vraxian culture, warriors died protecting their young. It was the highest honor. But Kale was not a warrior. He was a diplomat's assistant. He had no training for combat, no weapons, no armor, yet he had been willing to die for cubs that were not his own. Wrath stood and walked to a communications panel. He entered a command that very few Vraxians ever used. It was an ancient ritual, one reserved for the rarest occasions. When he returned to Kale's side, he carried a ceremonial blade. He waited until the human's eyes opened. "Kale," Wrath said formally, "you protected my cubs with your own life. You showed courage beyond measure. In the eyes of my people, you have earned a place in our pride." Kale looked confused. "Commander, I do not understand." Wrath raised the blade. Nira and Koven watched with wide eyes. With one swift motion, Wrath drew the blade across Kale's shoulder, making a careful cut. It was shallow, but would leave a permanent scar. "This is the pride mark," Wrath said. "It means you are packed now, family. You have the same rights and protections as any Vraxian warrior. Your honor is our honor. Your safety is our duty." Kale stared at the mark on his shoulder. Tears filled his eyes, though he tried to hide them. "I just did what anyone would do," he said quietly. "No," Wrath replied. "You did what humans do. And perhaps that is something my people need to learn?" The Alpha entered the quarters, found his cubs lying beside the human. The news spread through the ship like fire. A human had been pride-marked. By morning, every Vraxian on board knew what had happened. By the afternoon, the information had reached the fleet. By evening, it had traveled across space to the Vraxian homeworld. The reactions were strong and divided. Kale stood in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. His shoulder still hurt where the blade had cut him. The medical staff had healed it quickly, but the scar remained. It would always remain. He touched it gently through his shirt. He was packed now, family. The weight of it felt strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. "Uncle Kale!" He turned to see Nira and Kovan running toward him. They crashed into his legs, hugging him tight. Behind them walked Wrath, his expression serious. "How are you feeling?" Wrath asked. "Better. The doctors did good work." "The High Council wishes to speak with me," Wrath said. "About you. About the pride mark." Kale felt his stomach tighten. "They are angry. Many of them are. They say I have dishonored tradition, that a prey species cannot be packed, that I have made us look weak." "Maybe they are right," Kale said quietly. "I do not want to cause problems for you and your cubs." Wrath's eyes flashed. "Do not dare suggest you should not have been marked. You earned this honor with your blood? Any Vraxian who questions it questions my judgment as Alpha." The cubs pressed closer to Kale. Nira looked up at her father with determination in her young eyes. "If they say Uncle Kale is not Pack, then we are not Pack either," she declared. Koven nodded fiercely. "We stay with Uncle Kale." Wrath looked at his cubs with something like pride and pain mixed together. "You should not have to make such choices. You are cubs. You taught us to stand for what is right," Nira said. "Uncle Kale risked his life for us." "That is right." The communication panel on the wall beeped. Wrath's second officer appeared on the screen. "Commander, the High Council is ready for you. The connection is established in the main conference room." "I will be there shortly," Wrath replied. He turned to Kale. "Come with me. If they wish to judge my decision, they should see who they are judging." The conference room was large and cold. A massive holographic display showed the members of the High Council. 12 elder Vraxians, each one a legendary warrior and leader. Their faces were hard and skeptical. Kale stood beside Wrath, trying not to show his fear. These beings could order his death with a single word. They could start a war with Earth. They held unimaginable power. "Commander Wrath," the eldest council member spoke. Her name was Elder Sura. She was ancient by Vraxian standards, her scales gray with age. You have caused considerable disruption with your actions. Explain yourself. Roth stood tall. I performed the pride-marking ritual on a human named Kale. He protected my cubs during the pirate attack. He used his own body as a shield against falling debris. He was willing to die for them. Many warriors would do the same, another council member said dismissively. That is duty, not exceptional behavior. But he is not a warrior, Wrath replied. He is not even Vraxian. He had no duty to my cubs. Yet he protected them anyway. That makes his actions even more meaningful. Elder Sura studied Kale through the holographic display. Human, step forward. Kale walked closer to the display. His hands trembled slightly, but he kept his voice steady. Elder Sura, why did you protect the cubs? What did you hope to gain? The question surprised him. Gain? Nothing. They are children. They were scared. I helped them because it was the right thing to do. The right thing, she repeated slowly. Many species would have saved themselves first. Why did you not? Kale thought about his answer carefully. Where I come from, we have a belief. We say that children are everyone's responsibility. It does not matter if they are your own children or someone else's. If a child needs help, you help them. That is just what humans do. A younger council member scoffed. Weakness. You risk yourself for offspring that carry none of your genes. It makes no sense from a survival perspective. Maybe not, Kale agreed. But survival is not the only thing that matters. Connection matters. Community matters. Love matters. Love, another council member said the word like it tasted bitter. You barely knew these cubs. I knew they were scared and needed someone. That was enough. Elder Sura leaned forward. Tell me, human, do your people often care for young from other species? Yes, there are human doctors who travel to alien worlds to help sick children. Human teachers who work in refugee camps. Humans who adopt orphans from species we have only just met. It is not unusual for us. The council members murmured among themselves. Kale could see doubt and confusion on their faces. What he described was so foreign to their way of thinking. Commander Wrath, Elder Sura said. Show us the security footage of the incident. Roth pulled up the recordings. The council watched in silence as the scene played out. They saw Kale find the scared cubs. They saw him stay with them even when he could have left. They saw him carry Coven through the damaged ship. They saw him shield the cubs with his own body as the ceiling collapsed. When the footage ended, the conference room was quiet. This changes nothing, one council member said finally. He is still not Vraxian. He is weak, small, without claws or scales. Is he? Roth challenged. I have claws that can tear through metal. But I was not there when my cubs needed protection. This human has no claws. But he found a way to keep them safe anyway. Who is truly strong? You speak dangerous words, Commander. I speak truth. We Vraxians pride ourselves on strength. But we have become so focused on physical power that we have forgotten other kinds of strength. Strength of will. Strength of heart. This human showed both. Elder Sura raised her hand for silence. There is precedent to consider. Thousands of years ago, before we conquered the stars, there were other species on our home world. Some we absorbed into our pride, some we destroyed. The pride mark was created as a way to accept warriors from conquered tribes. Exactly, another elder said. Conquered. The humans are not conquered. Not yet, someone muttered. Kale felt anger flash through him. We do not wish to be conquered. We wish to be partners, allies, friends. Friends, Elder Sura repeated. When did a human last befriend a Vraxian? 3 days ago, Kale said simply. When your cubs decided to trust me. That brought another long silence. There is more to consider, Wrath said. Other species have noticed what happened. They are asking questions. They want to know about human behavior. Some are curious. Some are impressed. Impressed by weakness? Impressed by compassion, Wrath corrected. by the willingness to help others without expecting a reward, by the strength to be gentle. These are qualities most species respect, even if we Vraxians do not. Elder Sura looked at Kale for a long time. If we accept this pride marking, it will change things. Other species will want to study humans more closely. Some will see you as a threat. Others will see you as an opportunity. I understand, Kale said. Do you? Your entire species will be judged by your actions. If you fail, if you prove unworthy, it will reflect on all humans. Then I will not fail. Bold words, honest words. Elder Sura smiled slightly. It was not a warm smile, but it was not entirely cold either. Very well. The pride marking stands. But there will be conditions. Name them, Wrath said. An experiment. We will create exchange programs between Vraxians and humans. Human caretakers will work with our cubs. We will observe. We will test these claims about human compassion and strength. If they prove true, humanity may earn a greater place in the galaxy. If they prove false, the pride mark will be revoked and humanity will be declared unworthy. Kale felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He was suddenly representing his entire species. Every human would be judged by what happened next. I accept these terms, he said. On behalf of Earth's diplomatic mission. Then it is decided, Elder Sura said. Commander Wrath, you will oversee the initial programs. Human Kale, you will serve as the first official ambassador for interspecies family services. A position we are creating specifically for this experiment. The holographic display faded. The conference room fell dark. Wrath placed a heavy hand on Kale's shoulder, right over the pride mark. You have changed everything. For better or worse, we will find out together. Kale thought about his home, Earth. Billions of humans going about their lives, not knowing that their future in the galaxy now rested partly on his shoulders. I will not let them down, he said quietly. I will not let you down. I know, Wrath replied. That is why I marked you. The Alpha entered the quarters, found his cubs lying beside the human six. Months had passed since the High Council's decision. Kale stood at the viewing port of a transport ship, watching as a Vraxian colony world grew larger in the viewport. This was his fourth visit to a different Vraxian settlement, but this one was different. This one had just survived an attack. We will be landing in 10 minutes, the pilot announced. Ambassador Kale, Commander Wrath is waiting at the landing zone. Ambassador. The title still felt strange. Kale had gone from being a diplomat's assistant to representing humanity across multiple worlds. The responsibility was enormous. The ship touched down gently. Kale gathered his supplies and stepped out onto the planet's surface. The colony was called New Reach, a frontier settlement on the edge of Vraxian space. What he saw made his heart hurt. Damaged buildings, burn marks on the ground, and everywhere the signs of loss. Wrath waited near the landing pad. The commander looked tired. Behind him stood several Vraxian warriors, but Kale noticed something else. Dozens of cubs, all watching him with curious and frightened eyes. Kale, Wrath greeted him formally. Thank you for coming. What happened here? Raiders from the outer systems. They attacked 3 weeks ago. We drove them off, but the damage was done. 147 cubs lost their parents that day. Kale felt sick. So many orphans. So much pain. Traditional protocol says the cubs should be sent to military academies immediately, Wrath continued. But I convinced the elders to wait. To try something different. That is why you are here. You want me to help them. I want you to show us a better way. Behind Kale, other transport ships were landing. Human volunteers stepped out, carrying supplies and equipment. Teachers, counselors, caregivers. People who had heard about the experiment and volunteered to help. One of them was a woman named G1, a child psychologist from Earth. She walked up to Kale with a warm smile. So these are the cubs we will be helping, she said, looking at the gathered children. Her eyes were full of compassion, not pity. Yes, they have been through terrible trauma, then we better get to work. Over the next few days, the human volunteers transformed an empty warehouse into something new. They created spaces that felt safe and warm. They brought in soft materials for bedding, colorful decorations for the walls, and toys and games for the cubs to play with. The Vraxian observers watched with confusion. "This looks like a home, not a training facility," one warrior commented. "That is the point," Kale explained. "These cubs need to heal before they can be strong. They need to feel safe before they can be brave. Healing is weakness. No, healing is how you become strong again after being broken." The cubs were brought in slowly, a few at a time. At first they were suspicious and scared. They had been taught that showing emotion was weakness, that only strength mattered, but the humans were patient. One sat with a young cub named Tae-jin who had not spoken since his parents died. She did not force him to talk. She just sat beside him, drawing pictures. After an hour, Tae-jin picked up a crayon and started drawing another volunteer, a man named Hyun-woo, played games with a group of cubs. Simple games with rules and laughter. At first, the cubs did not know how to play. They had forgotten how. But slowly, hesitantly, they began to join in. Kale worked with the older cubs, the ones close to warrior age. They were the hardest to reach. They had been taught their whole lives that emotions were dangerous, that grief was shameful. "I do not need this," one cub named Daesung said angrily. "I am strong enough already." "I am sure you are," Kale replied calmly. "But strength is not just about fighting. It is also about knowing when to ask for help. Warriors do not ask for help." "Yes, they do. The best warriors know their limits. They know when to rely on their team." Daesung glared at him. "You know nothing about being a warrior. You are just a weak human." Kale pulled down his collar, showing the pride-marked scar on his shoulder. "Your commander gave me this. He said I earned it by protecting his cubs. I'm not Vraxian, but I am Pack, and Pack protects each other." The young cub stared at the scar. Slowly his anger faded. "You really protected them?" "I did what anyone should do. I helped children who needed me." "My parents died protecting me," Daesung said, his voice cracking. "I should have been strong enough to save them." There it was. The guilt. The pain that all these cubs carried. Kale sat down beside him. "Listen to me carefully. You were not supposed to save them. They were supposed to protect you. That is what parents do. They do not do it because you are weak. They do it because you are precious to them. But now they are gone. Yes, and that is horrible and unfair. You are allowed to be sad about it. You are allowed to cry. That does not make you weak. It makes you someone who loved them." Daesung's eyes filled with tears. He tried to hold them back, but they came anyway. For the first time since his parents died, he let himself cry. Kale put an arm around the young cub's shoulders. "It is okay. I am here." Over the following weeks, similar scenes played out across the shelter. Cubs who had been holding in their grief finally let it out. Cubs who had forgotten how to play began to laugh again. Cubs who thought they had to face everything alone learned they had support. The Vraxian warriors watched all of this with mixed feelings. Some were dismissive, but others began to see something they had not expected. The cubs were not getting weaker. They were getting stronger. The cubs who talked about their pain slept better at night. The cubs who played games learned better teamwork. The cubs who accepted help became better at helping others. 2 months after the program started, the High Council sent representatives to observe. Elder Sura herself made the journey. Along with several other council members, they watched as Kale led a group discussion with older cubs. The cubs talked openly about their fears and hopes. They supported each other. They showed vulnerability and strength at the same time. "This is not what I expected," Elder Sura admitted to Wrath. "What did you expect?" "Weakness, softness, cubs who could not fight." "And what do you see?" She watched as Daesung helped a younger cub who was struggling with a lesson. The older cub was patient and encouraging, showing a maturity he had not had before. "I see cubs who know what they are fighting for," she said slowly. "Not just fighting because it is what they were told to do. They understand protection now. They understand why strength matters." The humans taught them that, Wrath said, by showing them compassion first. The council members spent several days observing. They watched the humans work with cubs. They saw the games, the counseling sessions, the quiet moments of comfort. They also saw the results. When it came time for the cubs to begin basic warrior training, something remarkable happened. The cubs who had gone through the human program performed better than cubs from traditional academies. They worked together more effectively. They showed better judgment. They understood strategy not just as tactics, but as protecting what matters. Elder Sura called a meeting with all the human volunteers. She stood before them, this ancient warrior who had seen countless battles. "You have proven something important," she said. "Strength and compassion are not opposites. They work together. A warrior who understands what they are protecting fights better than a warrior who only knows how to destroy." One stepped forward. "Does this mean the program will continue?" "It means more than that. The High Council has voted. Humanity will be officially recognized as a pride species. You will have full rights and protections under Vrexian law. More importantly, we will adopt some of your methods into our own culture." The room was silent. Then one of the human volunteers started clapping. Others joined in. The Vraxian cubs, who had been watching, joined the applause with their own rumbling purrs. Later that evening, Kale sat outside watching the planet's two moons rise. Nira and Kovan sat on either side of him. They visited often now, whenever Wrath's duties brought him to this sector. "You did it, Uncle Kale," Nira said. "You changed everything." "Not just me. Lots of humans helped. And your father helped by being willing to try something new." "Will you stay here?" Kovan asked. "Or will you go to other places?" "I will go where I am needed," Kale replied. "There are other colonies, other cubs who need help. But I will always come back to visit you." Wrath approached from the settlement. He sat down on the ground beside them, something he rarely did. It was a gesture of equality, of being part of the group rather than above it. "The Council wants to expand the program," Wrath said. "Human caretakers on 50 different worlds. Training programs for Vraxian parents who want to learn your methods. Cultural exchange at every level." That is a lot of work," Kale said. "Yes, but it is necessary work. You showed us that we were missing something important. We were so focused on making strong warriors that we forgot to help them understand why they fight, what they are protecting." "Family," Nira said softly. "We fight to protect family." "Exactly," Wrath agreed. He looked at Kale with respect in his eyes. "You know, when I first found you in my quarters with my cubs, I thought you were a threat. I saw only weakness. I could not have been more wrong. I am still weak compared to you," Kale said with a slight smile. "You could still break me like a twig. Physical strength, yes. But there are other kinds of strength. Emotional strength. The strength to care for others even when it is difficult.